The term dark night of the soul originated in the 16th century when the Spanish monk Saint John of the Cross wrote about his experiences in a beautiful and a heartfelt poem. He referred to the dark night of the soul as an experience of losing touch with the spiritual self and being pushed into the abyss of godless emptiness. The modern spiritual philosophers associate the dark night of a soul with something of an ego death, a time when deep-seated changes start to occur in our personal association with who we thought ourselves to be. The dark night makes you ask questions like, who am I? Why am I on this planet? What is my purpose? The dark night of the soul closely resembles the psychological theory of positive disintegration, developed in the 1960s by the Polish psychologist Kazimierz Dabrowski. Dabrowski noticed that those who harness the potential of a crisis or a trauma tend to have an extra sensitivity or overexcitability that leads them to experience a crisis in a stronger, deeper, and more personal manner. These individuals were more likely to react to a traumatic event with self-reflection, an act that can propel them into development of themselves and have a much brighter future, growing as a person through the trauma they suffered. The concept of negredo is a take of the alchemists on the dark night of the soul. Negredo, or the blackness in the alchemical sense, means purification and decomposition. It is considered the toughest part of the alchemical process. In any religion that revolves around agriculture, the rotting and the death comes before the rebirth and the renewal, and the dark night of the soul is the same death of your ego before your renewal as a human being takes place. Dark night of the soul is often confused with depression, and honestly the two can feel much similar. So let us understand how it is different from the conventional depression. Carl May, in his book titled The Dark Night of the Soul, explains that during depression, a person loses his sense of humor and the ability to see comedy in certain situations. The person shuts down in the sense that he loses the ability to offer compassion to others. Clinical depression hampers all the senses of a person, almost disabling them. During the dark night of the soul, however, a person stays relatively stable, and there is a dissociation that occurs within themselves and their old ways. They stop associating with the habits and the likes of their old self, and almost a void occurs, where they are yet to discover the new ways, the new likes, and the new dislikes for themselves. One major difference between the two is that depression is centered around the self, while the dark night of the soul is centered around who one associated as the self in the past. The dark night of the soul is usually followed by questions that force one to wonder, who am I? What brings me here? What purpose do I have? While depression is a psychiatric phenomenon, dark night of the soul is completely a spiritual phenomenon. One of the reasons we go through the dark night of the soul is to shed the old patterns and behaviors that we once associated with. While we go through our lives, we develop responses to the outside stimuli, and more often than not, these responses stick with us even after the stimuli has long ended. These responses that we had developed to cope with the difficult times stay with us in a subconscious part of the brain, and many a times stop us from ascending spiritually, and hence they need to be curbed before we ascend spiritually. Our entire existence in the world has been highly influenced by the people and the society around us. As a child, we grow with a certain name, inherit a certain set of cultural values, and aspire to be someone that the society expects us to be. Through our education in the schools and colleges, we are further influenced by the educators and their view. Our entire personality is a collection of conditioning we have received from the society through the years. As one starts to awaken and become more spiritual, we become much more sensitive to how this programming is not really working out for us. We become much more sensitive as how we need to break through this programming for the benefit of our own spiritual self. A person who has bought into the notions of the societal life runs on autopilot. The person is almost a slave to their ego, chasing the next appropriate thing or event in their lives. From attending a school to getting good grades, getting into a good and reputed college, to getting a decent paying job, getting a life partner, buying your own home, marrying and having kids, everything seems to be running on an autopilot. A person like such tends to flow almost aimlessly through the direction set by the society around them until an event, usually of tragic origin, anything from a breakup to an illness to the loss of a loved one, shakes the world around them. This pause, which is a result of this tragic event, makes us re-evaluate the choices that we have been making in our lives. We tend to notice that the things we thought had given our lives meaning serve us no more, and this triggers an ego death. The dark night of the soul is an integral part of spiritual awakening. It is the time when we understand that materialism does not give us any pleasure. It is at this stage that we spot the difference between conditioning and reality. In the world we live, we're constantly made to believe that money will bring us happiness, that a good-looking partner would bring us pleasure and contentment. A big house, a major status symbol, will make us feel happy. We're made to believe that a consistent job will get us security. We live believing these rules and never do we actually question any of it. We are made to feel like happiness can only be chased to these measures. We feel that if we lag behind in any one of these fields, we would not be happy. This entire concept of chasing happiness makes happiness an event of the future, which we are constantly chasing and never actually have. Each milestone we complete, we feel a rush of adrenaline and are content for a very small time, after which we are back to the grind, back to the next big thing. We never understand that happiness just is. Happiness is right now. Happiness is this very second. The dark night of the soul is one of the most painful times in the spiritual awakening process. It can and does feel overwhelming, as your entire idea of who you thought you were has been shaken to the core. Everything that once got you pleasure just ceases to have an effect on you anymore, and you lose every point of identification from your earlier self. This is an extremely painful process, and we feel alone and extremely stranded throughout the process. It is so painful because we are losing our identification with our earlier self. We have lost the things that used to give us pleasure earlier and have not yet found what would give us pleasure in our new life. We go through an ego death, the death of our old self, who we thought we were. The dark night of the soul is like packing up from a town that you've lived in for years and moving to a different country altogether, where the language and the culture are alien to you. The good part about this is that there is light at the end of the tunnel. This is just a temporary phase and would get over. It will just change you completely in the process, both intellectually and spiritually. In the next video, I will talk about the signs that you are going through the dark night of the soul and how to navigate through this time. Please subscribe to the channel if you enjoy such spiritual content and leave a like and comment if it was helpful. I would love to hear back from you guys. Until the next time, thank you.